Good evening, and welcome to another video by me, Stephanie Canada. Tonight we're going to be discussing the history of sewing patterns in brief and how to check an unprinted sewing pattern. The sewing pattern we'll be checking tonight is a Vogue Couturier design circa 1951. In case you're curious, this right here is the pattern we'll be checking. Now this guy might look familiar to those of you that watched my first video. I'll put a little link right up here in case you want to watch it. This is also one that came in that eBay mystery box that we did last week. I want to give you guys a little bit of history of sewing patterns before we get started, but I do want to stress a few things. Number one, I'm going to mainly focus on what happened in America. I am very good with Simplicity, Vogue, McCall's, Butterick, those companies, but those are all based in the US. So I'm not going to try and speak to, France and all these other places that very clearly have been making clothing for years. So I'm just gonna stay with what I know. Also, I'm going to let you know that the history I'm giving you is very, very brief. So if you want to dive in more, I'll provide the links in the comments below as to where I sourced most of this information so that if you choose to continue forth researching, you can do that. Ellen Louise Demarest and Williams Jennings Demarest began the actual pattern making process in about 1860. They would hold fashion shows in their houses and then offer the people that were coming the opportunity to buy the unprinted tissue paper of the dresses and clothing they were seeing. So that really began the entire trend. Now, Madame Demarest then created two publications. The first was Madame Demarest's Emporium of Fashion, which led to an illustrated monthly so that they could see the diagrams in color. Now, Ebenezer Butterick jumped on the pattern gravy train in 1863, shortly followed by James McCall, who was actually a Scottish tailor who established the McCall Pattern Company in 1870. Now, all that being said, here's where we're really getting to, which is Vogue Pattern Service was began in 1899 as a companion to the Vogue magazine, so that the ladies could buy the magazine and make one of the options that was in the print that they were seeing. Now in 1909, Condé Nast bought Vogue and turned it into an empire. Okay, before we get started checking our amazing Vogue Couturier 620, I want to let you guys know about a resource that I use very frequently. It is called the Vintage Pattern Wiki. Just Google search it because the address is far too long. I will put it in the comments below, so if you want to go check it out, you are totally available to do that. Now, I use this to help date my patterns, to help sort of describe in case I can't figure out exactly what I'm looking at in the pattern, or if my cover is, this one's not too bad, but sometimes they are so destroyed you can't see the front of it, so you need to go research it to figure out what the front cover actually looks like. So that being said, it's a great resource. Oh, and in big bold letters, not sponsored by Vintage Pattern Wiki. I also don't think they do that, but just really not sponsored. Just a really, really great resource. And hashtag pet peeve here, not free patterns. Every time you see one of those clickbaits that says 83,000 patterns are now available free online, they're lying to you. Ugh, not free patterns. What it is a resource to date and help find patterns that are available to buy, like from me. Because every time I have a pattern, will link it to the wiki so that if someone looks it up and goes, oh, it's a great pattern, I'd really love to have that, you can scroll down the page and there is a label of vendors. Hey, look at that. That's where I come in. So really great resource, not free patterns. Okay, enough of the rant, off my soapbox. Here we go into checking the pattern. So the first thing is that you need to make sure you have everything that you're going to need for the entire process at the beginning. For me, that means a pen, preferably an erasable one, my personal check sheet that I made that works the best for me. You also need all the pattern pieces out of the envelope, along with the instructions, crossing your fingers that they're there. And most importantly, for when you're all done checking your pattern, I use an acid-free sleeve to make sure that the pattern and envelope and all the pieces are now protected from the outside elements. So we know what the front of our envelope looks like. What we need is the back, because in the back you have this handy little 17-piece layout for number 620, which is going to be great because if you didn't have the instructions, this layout will at least give you an idea of what you're looking for. All right, now for the fun part. Now, if you'll remember from our last video, this lovely pattern, the acid had leached onto the pattern pieces, so they're a little discolored. But really, at the end of the day, for those of us that want to use them and trace them, well, trace them and use them normally is the order of operations for that guy. You trace them first so that you are using clean paper and any adjustments you make won't alter the original pattern. And then you use that tracing as opposed to the original pattern. So we discovered that this guy had acid on him, and that's really okay. So, and I'm sorry, I don't have a top shot today, so this is gonna be the best we get. The best part that I'm seeing from the get-go, right here, these are the instructions. These are very important, especially for the older patterns to really know. Now we got a little fold right here, but that's okay. We can kind of just nudge that out. It's all right. They're a little tattered on the sides. Again, not ideal, but also realistically, this pattern is now 69 years old. I think it's fair to have a few tears. So the good thing is you've got the entire layout, and here, woo, on the inside is another line drawing, so that if you were missing the envelope, you would now at least know what pattern hopefully all your pieces go to. Now inside here is going to be the main pattern identification chart. Ta-da! So this one is going to really detail where all your dots go, your stitching lines, and it tells you what pieces are what and how many you should cut of each. Below that are going to be your cutting layouts. We'll do a whole other video if you guys really want of how to do the cutting layout for an unprinted pattern when you're having to use a tracing. So if you guys would like to see me do that, toss that in the comments below. And I can't say I'll work on it while I'm in my hotel room, because in case you notice, the background's a little different. But I can add that to my list for when I'm home this summer of the videos you guys would like to see me do. Those were supposed to be words. I don't know if it actually worked out. Oh well. And also, if you have questions, just pop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. All right, so we're gonna get started. So we now know we need 17 pieces. Hooray, that's our magic number. Now, some dealers will just count the pattern pieces and be done. That's not how I roll. Now, digging into the pattern, I'm gonna start out with a small piece, just because it's a little bit easier. Now, the interesting thing about this guy is that Vogue chose to just do a labeled pattern piece. So they didn't do A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. They actually typed out sleeve facing on the pattern piece itself. So I know exactly that this is my sleeve facing. And if I check my handy dandy identification chart, I see the sleeve facing is right there. I'm looking for the straight of grain marks to be in the same place. I am looking for all of my notches to line up with the notches on that identification chart that I showed you guys earlier. Because those notches tell me that this sleeve facing does indeed go to this pattern. Now, the nice thing about this pattern is that it's all blue. There's no, besides the discoloration, there's no other colors in this pattern. There's no variant of tan or back in the early days of Vogue, which were long phased out by 1951, they would actually do different colors for different sections of the dress. So they would do like a pink if it was for lining, and the blue would be the main body. It was, the first time I got one of those was confusing. Took me forever to get that guy checked. But we got there, it was complete, it was a good day. So we're starting out strong, sleeve facing. This is occasionally one of the pattern pieces that is missing. And since he matches the color of all the rest, and they all match, I'm not gonna double check color anymore, because I'm going to assume that all these pattern pieces now go in the same family, unless there's something striking to me, such as like a different wear pattern or different stylized text, because the text would vary from pattern to pattern. So if there's a really big rounded A and then a really tiny letter F, you're probably dealing with two different patterns, and you need to be careful. And then you need to go back to your pattern identification guide and check to see which one actually goes there, because it does happen. So sleeve facing, check. All right, moving on. And see, this guy's, he's trying to be sneaky. Tan, nope. Light shade of blue, you go with their friends. All right, this guy, I can already tell you right now that this is gonna be my belt. This little 3-notch right here is telltale, either this or a straight triangle on the end. That's gonna be your belt piece. But also, right down here, bam, belt. So this actually is my belt for this particular pattern. Huzzah. Piece number 2. Next up, we have our pocket. Always helpful to have pockets in all of your dresses, ladies and gentlemen, friends, neighbors, folks in general. Pockets, they're important. Don't forget to add your pocket. Moving on, pocket makes number 3. All right, now here we have got a couple pattern pieces in one swoop. So that means we need to be careful, because whoever made this the last time clearly stacked these all together so that, you know, they knew that those were the pattern pieces they'd already used. And so in this one we have piece number 4. Ta-da! The bodice front, which does indeed line up with what the bodice front should look like, because this scoop neckline, oh buddy, that is a telltale sign that I have the correct bodice front in this pattern. Yes, we like that. So that makes number 4, check. And then also in this lovely stack, we have got the skirt yoke, which, since this is a yoked side dress, it had those lovely hip yokes going on. That's what this piece is right here. All right, so this makes piece a number 5. Moving forward, we have yoke front. So this guy does indeed match up with the yoke front that I see on my pattern guide. So huzzah, piece number 6. And thankfully, because this pattern and whoever made it last really put it away quite nicely, all I'm doing is folding it back the way that they had it. I don't know who put it away last, but they did a really good job, so I'm not gonna mess with it. Sometimes you get wads and crinkles and annoying things like that, but this one is great. All right, aha, we love this piece because this piece sometimes gets lost just for this sheer tiny factor of it. This is going to be our bodice underlay. So this makes piece number 6, I think we were at. I feel like we were at 6. This makes piece number 7. So 7 down, 10 to go. All right. Ooh, okay. That was number 7. Help me remember that. All right, this is exciting because Vogue patterns would come with their own labels. And those labels, when the pattern would get used, would normally then be hand-stitched into the back of the dress or garment, so that the person who made it could remember which line they had brought it from. Sometimes that person would then write what pattern number it was, but we, my friends, have the label. Ha 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 ha. So this label actually is really exciting because it lines up perfectly with the back of the envelope here. And what you're seeing is this same exact lettering on the back of the envelope, and that's how the people behind the counter would know which label to hand the person as they bought their pattern, so that they could then put it in their garment. So this is really exciting. And for those of you that wonder what it's worth, this makes it worth more, because even though the envelope is tattered, I have the original label, and that alone helps show the provenance of that. This pattern was either used once and then tucked away nicely, or was never used at all and just was pulled apart out of its factory folds at some point. Now, I'm going to vote for the first one, which is used once and then put away nicely, because I did see some slight nicks on that sleeve, on that yoke that we saw earlier. So that tells me somebody's probably already used it at least one time. All right, had 7. We have a label. Moving forward. Here we have thick piece, large piece. I got a little couple fray babies right there, but little tiny frays. So that means it's definitely been used at least once, but that's okay. There's no pinking shears, nicks along the side. It's something you have to disclose when you're selling patterns, because sometimes that can actually affect the line of the pattern, and then it might mess up the next person making it. So, but we don't have those. Hooray. Oh my goodness. Open up. There it goes. Goodness gracious. Okay, here we go. Now, moving forward. This is the skirt back. Hooray. Number 8, big piece down. We like that. Now, if you were doing this for the first time, I would advise making sure that you have your little checklist going. If you either want to scan the back of your envelope and actually do a check on it, don't mark the back of the envelope. I'm looking at you. Leave yourself a note, tape it on the front of your acid-free cover so that way your acid-laden paper doesn't bleed onto your pattern or your pieces or the envelope or the instructions, etc., etc., etc. So, all right, back off the soapbox. Here we go. We have 8 pieces. All right, another thicker piece. But this time, not the other half of the one I was looking for. This one. Oh, this is that beautiful long sleeve is what this is. And this has clearly, I'm gonna go with not been made, because there's no real nicks other than a minor tear or two from storage. So that's always good. So this is our sleeve, and it still has all lengths available. You can do the short, you can do the 3/4. Oh, just kidding. You can do the 3/4, you can do the short. Those are it. That's the 2 options. So this makes piece number 9, which is excellent. Oh dear. Yeah. And sometimes it looks easy at first to like, oh, well, it just folds back this way. I've been doing this for a very long time, aka since 2011, and it still sometimes is challenging to remember which way the daggone thing folds. This, oh, tiny piece, you go over there. All right, this one is going to be, aha, excellent, good, skirt front. We need that. Skirts needed front. All right, so that makes number 10. Hooray, number 10. Excellent. Moving on. All right, so this is going to be another one of the tiny pieces that normally would get lost. This looks like it is the skirt underlay. So, yay, tiny piece. I'm checking my identification chart here. Yep, right there he is. My little skirt underlay. Great. This makes piece number 11. All right, number 12 has got a little bit, oh no, it's fine, it was just folded. Okay, good. I do like to tell buyers if there are large tears that they will have to deal with. So at first I thought that this end was torn. It's not torn, it was just folded wonky. So it looked like it was torn, and it is in fact not, which is great. So this is going to be our, bam, front facing. So this piece number 12. It's going to go in our pile because hooray, front facing. And then here we have the skirt facing, another smaller piece. Also sometimes very easy to lose. Glad it's here for number 13. And here we have another tiny piece, facing 14. And again, at this point I'm not really referencing my guide because these all align with what I'm looking for. Then we have here, bodice facing. Yeah, they really enjoyed facing things in the 50s. They thought that everything should lay nicely and neatly underneath, and most of the times nowadays, if the facing is there, it's like the entire dress or the entire garment, and not just this little collar-y bit that like is itchy and pokes you, and if it doesn't lay flat, it's annoying. So anyway, they were a big fan of the facings, and by golly, piece number 16, that is that bodice front, or that bodice facing. All right. Oh, I must have lost count. Oh, that must have been 15. Whoops. Okay, so moving on. Pretending like I didn't just count that wrong. Anyway, This is why you use your check sheet. So you don't do things like that. And this is going to be the bodice back. Another very important piece. Glad it's here. Otherwise, without the bodice back of your dress, it's going to be a little awkward. Or could just be very refreshing depending on the weather. Who knows? You pick. I don't judge. All right. And then this guy is actually piece number 17. And this is going to be our cuff for our, I believe it's just used on the short sleeve. So this guy has a little tab you can see here where you would thread right through for the buttons. And then you could do that little tab button accent on your short sleeve to make your dress extra saucy. All right. And that, my friends, is it. Which means, da-da-da, cue the fancy music. This pattern is complete, which makes me very, very happy because this is the reason I bought that entire box the first time that you guys got to watch me go through and be distressed and concerned with. So, hooray, we have a complete pattern, despite me losing count halfway through. As far as that goes, that's really how I do it. It's not as hard as you think. At least it's not as hard when it's laid out as well as the Vogues are. I will say there has been one pattern. This pattern took me 90 minutes to make sure it was complete. That's because it is called a May Manton from the late 1800s. And there were no notations of letters. There were no notations of numbers. There was no nothing other than notches and a very destroyed envelope. It took me 90 minutes for one pattern, only to find out that it wasn't complete and I was missing the front. Slightly important piece. So sometimes you do what you can, and then if it's not complete, you just have to move on. Dang it. Thank you so much, folks, for going on this ride with me as we checked this sewing pattern together. I hadn't looked at it before we looked at it together, so sometimes you just have to roll the dice and see what you get. Now, I do want to let you guys know there's a fantastic resource. It's a blog from, I believe it was 2016, but still very relevant, by Midvale Cottage. I'll put the address in the link below so that you guys can go and check out. She did a great set of diagrams so that you can very clearly see where the 3 dots line up with the other 3 dots and how this piece correlates to this piece. It's a really fantastic resource. She's a fellow pattern seller who even I would buy a pattern from, and that's saying something because my goal is to go get the ones that are dirty and put them back together again. That's what I do. But she's a really fantastic seller, and she's agreed to let you guys go check out her blog in case you need more details about how to use your unprinted sewing pattern.